Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Between the Vines. I'm Jennifer Phillips Russo, the Cornell Viticulture Extension Specialist for the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program, with my co-host, Andrew Holden, who is our Penn State University Business Management Specialist at the Lake Erie Regional Grape Program. And we
Hey,
have
everyone.
a very special guest back
No,
with
geez.
us today. Dr. Terry Bates, Director of the Cornell Lake Erie Research and Extension Laboratory in Portland, New York. It's an agri-tech campus of Cornell University. Thank you and welcome back, Terry.
Hello.
You
Great to
should
be
just
back.
be like an honorary co-host is what you should be.
Yeah.
So in the theory, in the spirit of land grant universities, it is our job to make sure that we get research into the hand of people who can use it and work with it. And you do such great research in our region. So it just makes that transition easy to have you pop on and talk with us every once in a while.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you. And today we want to talk about your fertilizer calculator that you developed.
Yes. So I've gotten a lot of okay, let me back up. So we've been doing vineyard nutrition work for a long time. And currently I'm involved with the high res vineyard nutrition USDA project run by Marcus Keller out of Washington State University. And just there's been a ton of reinvestigation into things we thought we knew, and some things have been confirmed. I'm like, yep, that's the way we should do it, and we just confirmed it. And there's other aspects of nitrogen and potassium that we've taken a closer look at, and not saying that what we were doing was wrong, but we fine-tuned it a little bit more.
Love that.
So if anyone has listened to me give a nutrition talk before, you know that I'm really big on nutrient supply, nutrient uptake, and nutrient demand, and looking at all of those for your nutrient management plan. It's not just, so many people they either just look at soils or just look at tissue or just use rule of thumb.
What color are the leaves?
Yeah, seat of the pants stuff. To make their fertilizer recommends for their vineyard. So I kind of like to take a look at all three. And the reason I do that, by the way, so so when I was at Penn State so many moons ago, I was in the plant nutrition lab there, and both took the class and also had a TA the class for nutrition. And that is how we broke down the entire semester of the plant nutrition class at Penn State. There's a whole section on soils and nutrient supply, a whole section on root biology and how vines take up nutrients and transport proteins and everything. And then about demand, like how different plant varieties or commercial practices have different nutrient demands, and how to put them all together into a nutrient management plan. So taking all that in, growers still just want me to tell them, how much nitrogen do you want me to apply? So we made up these calculators. Let me share my screen.
And while he's sharing his screen, you can look back into our past podcasts that we have out there. We did an entire series of nutrients and how Terry got to his recommends through some of the research that he has done.
Yeah.
And others.
Okay, so when you look at these, I have a nitrogen calculator and a potassium calculator. And so again, they're really broken down into different sections.
Terry, I'm sorry. Do you just want to tell people where to find them first?
Oh, yep. Go to the Efficient Vineyard website and
efficientvineyard.com.
Yeah, efficientvineyard.com. Go under viticulture blog. And so there's an article on the crop load calculator or crop estimation calculator we talked about in the last podcast. And then I have a nitrogen and potassium fertilizer calculator. And just click on the nitrogen one, and this will pop up. It'll come up on your phone too if you navigate to the site. So where was I going with this? So just put in all these values and it tells you how much nitrogen to add. Okay, so I broke it down into what I consider a maintenance nitrogen or maintenance potassium, and then a corrective nitrogen or potassium value. The maintenance is based on the idea of, oh, okay, I have this vineyard. You know what? My vineyard's pretty healthy. There's no obvious nutrient deficiencies. My production level's okay, but I just want to know from a maintenance standpoint, like how much nitrogen or potassium should I be applying? So for the nitrogen calculator, we start out with soil organic matter, and that comes from your soil test results. That because we, by rule of thumb, we say we get about 20 pounds of nitrogen per percent organic matter in our soils in New York here. Again, unirrigated, dry land farmed, own rooted grapevines. That 20 pounds per percent of organic matter usually bears truthful. uh, if you do a lot in your vineyard to improve soil health, cover cropping or if you spread manure in your vineyard and you're doing things to improve soil health, you can up that rate of nitrogen release per percent organic matter. Or if you have a pretty dead soil, that number is going to be lower. But rule of thumb, we use 20% or 20 pounds per percent organic matter. And then field observations, again, you can either measure these directly, or if you know your vineyard and you're honest or your eye is calibrated about what your vine size and crop size are, and crop size you should be able to get from last year's yield maps anyways, you change those and it'll change your maintenance rate. So it's basically saying, for as much fruit as I take out of the vineyard at harvest, or if a vine is bigger, it needs more nitrogen. You're kind of calculating what that maintenance dose is just to kind of maintain the vineyard where it is. And then corrective rates are based on, you know what? I have a section of my vineyard that's not performing very well. It might be nitrogen or it might not be nitrogen. And the way to tell that is to go out and actually take tissue samples, either at bloom or veraison. So one of the big questions in the high-res vineyard nutrition project is, do I collect leaves or do I collect petioles? Do I do it at bloom or do I do it at veraison? And for right now, I have an option where you can choose any of them.
Wow.
I know some growers have taken petioles at veraison forever, and they have this like long history of records on their farm, which I actually think is more important than saying, okay, I'm going to wholesale switch to bloom time now. But from a comparative standpoint, it's like I know what's happening on my farm, and that's the way I'm gonna do it. Other growers are switching to bloom time leaf blades, and they're showing that like the coefficient of variation, like the variation in the data with the leaves is tighter. So it has like a leg up over using petioles. Um, and as part of the whole high res project, we're trying to say, okay, what are the critical values or ranges we should be looking for in these different tissues? So there's a lot of like behind the scenes going on. But for example, say I take a veraison petiole for nitrogen, um, in a very interesting thing, just as a side note,
I love these.
everybody like, so apparently at the lab there's a drinking game whenever I mention Nelson Challis.
I'm so sorry we told you that.
We
I
have
think
we have a lot of fun
it's
at the
good.
lab.
He was a really darn good viticulturist, so I'm glad that his lessons are still being used. I found a very old article, like back from the 1950s, saying that you should collect bloom time tissue samples for nitrogen, and veraison, like you should never take it at veraison. But for potassium, it's the opposite. Like the bloom time is actually very like whatever. It's very cloudy what it's actually telling you at bloom for potassium. But because the fruit needs so much potassium late in the season, taking that veraison sample is really telling you what your potassium status of the vines are. So he actually said, depending on what you're sampling for, you should do it at different times of the year. Okay, so
Are
that's
you finding that in your research? Like, did you happen to see if that correlates?
that's we're still working through it. There's a lot of data there.
There is a lot of data, but I'm
Uh,
excited
uh,
to see what you guys get out of it.
yeah, I think from a broad perspective, all the data is pointing us to the same stuff that we already knew.
Okay.
But just from the sheer, like we're doing different varieties in different regions on different soils and different rootstocks and trying to decipher all that, like how does that play into what the values are and what it's telling you and how you should react to that in terms of how much fertilizer you need to correct. So, so again, this says at the title, it says nitrogen fertilizer calculator for Concord Vineyards. I probably should say own rooted Concord Vineyards, and it's beta because what might really change in this whole calculator, what the values. So as I change this value for my Verasion petiole N, right, it starts to change what the corrective N amount is.
Right.
So anywhere from 0 to 50 pounds of nitrogen, of actual nitrogen.
Look at the cost per acre that's there moving.
Yeah, so behind the scenes, I may change over time as we learn more. I may change what those ranges are, and so what the calculator outputs. But for now, this is the best knowledge that we have. And I did put in different fertilizers, so you can click on any or all of these fertilizers.
You want to read them off just for our listeners?
So there's, yeah, urea, ammonium nitrate, DAP or diammonium phosphate, and monoammonium phosphate or MAP, which tend to be more expensive, but also have a phosphorus component to it. And you can put in what I just put in what I got off the internet
for the cost
and what the cost is. But I mean, talk to your local fertilizer dealer and put in the price per ton that you purchase it at. And it will tell you as a cost comparison, if I have to put on, based on what I put into my calculator, it says I need 15 pounds of actual N for maintenance and 50 pounds of actual nitrogen for corrective N. So I need 65 pounds. And what is that? So I need 141 pounds of urea or 203 pounds of ammonium nitrate, and what those costs breakdown is.
That is fantastic that you could do all of them at the same time.
Yep.
And I really, really love that feature.
Yeah.
So I guess you describe it a little bit better.
Right. I mean, everyone in the industry says urea is your cheapest source of nitrogen. But if you're looking to add phosphorus, you might want to move to a MAP or a DAP.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you the cost per acre at the end, based on what your vineyard needs, based on the information that you put in there from your results.
Okay, so that's nitrogen. So we know what we call, if you listen to the other podcasts on nutrition, that the oxyanions, right? So nitrate, phosphate, sulfate, those come from organic matter. So the higher the organic matter, the higher the releases of those nutrients are going to be. And then on the other side of the periodic table, you have your cations. So potassium, magnesium, calcium. So those all interact in terms of soil availability and uptake. And so that's the kind of thing that goes in the potassium calculator. So there's more information needed for the potassium calculator off of the soil test than the nitrogen. So first of all, we put in pH. We tend to have acidic soils in our region. So soil pH tells you what your pH is, like, oh, I need to lime or not lime, right? And our target is between 5.5 and 6.5. So if I'm below 5.5, I'm saying to myself, I need to add lime to get it into that range. The buffer pH is used to tell you how much lime that you need to get into that range. So you kind of need both of those, and they both come off of a standard soil test. And then your parts per million of calcium, magnesium, and potassium help calculate what your cation exchange capacity is of the soil. And more importantly, for this calculator, it's looking at the ratio of magnesium to potassium. So
with your pH?
So the pH, they're all interrelated. I was like, wait, did we glitch? They're all interrelated, right? So the pH, soil pH itself will change the overall cation exchange capacity of that soil. So on your soil test, as the pH changes, the amount of calcium, magnesium, and potassium, those values are going to change as well. So again, there's a lot going on behind the scenes in the calculator. It's looking at all that stuff.
Okay, great.
um,
That's what I wanted you to say is that you've taken all that into account
yeah.
on the backside.
So and again, this is a beta version, and things I might tweak things a little bit. I mean, basically the whole thing is going to stay the same, but we could tweak it a little bit. The if you talk to some people, they will apply their potassium based on the balance of calcium, magnesium, and potassium off of their soil test, which is very true. Those are all cations. They compete with each other on cation exchange sites in the soil profile. I weigh more heavily on the magnesium to potassium ratio because of the competition in root uptake, which is not usually considered by people who are just looking at the soil. So, whatever, magnesium and potassium have antagonistic effects on each other in root uptake. And it only becomes a problem because we need so much potassium in our fruit. When we're pushing our crop levels up really high, from veraison to harvest, the fruit needs a lot of potassium. So if we have too much magnesium in that mix, it hurts the potassium, and that's when we run into potassium deficiency. And since this is a potassium calculator, we put emphasis on it.
Hard to
Okay.
say all of that at the same
Yeah,
time.
so all of these things, pH, buffer pH, the amount of calcium, magnesium, potassium, like they're all interrelated. There's a lot of calculations going on behind the scenes, to and viticulture experience, right? To make up, okay, what would the decision be? Um, so and then again, field observations, vine size and crop size. As the crop size goes up, the crop needs relatively more potassium than nitrogen. So that really factors into the maintenance rate of, okay, if I'm a grower and I'm in that 8 to 10 tons per acre year in and year out, that my maintenance rates of potassium are going to be higher. In general, for both nitrogen and potassium, the maintenance rates are going to be lower than the corrective. Again, the theory is, or the concept is, hey, I'm running this vineyard, things look good. I don't see any major potassium deficiency, but I am pulling off 8 to 10 tons per acre. How much potassium should I be adding back to that vineyard just to kind of keep the status quo? The corrective K is based off of tissue values. I see a problem. I sample a section of the vineyard that looks like it's got potassium deficiency. I compare that to a tissue I collected from a healthy section of my vineyard to really see if I have a potassium problem. And then that leads to a corrective rate, which tends to be much higher. So let's just put in, for example, I have a pH of 4.5, which is low, but not uncommon for our area. And a buffer pH, say, of 5.7, calcium, let's just artificially put a higher magnesium. So if you talk to a soil scientist, it's calcium to magnesium to potassium ratio is like 20 to 4 to 1 is what they're usually looking at. With high producing Concord vineyards, we want that magnesium to potassium ratio to be more like 2 to 1 or even 1 to 1, which is just a little bit different than like the corn guys in the Midwest who want 20 to 4 to 1 and they like live by that. We want that ratio of magnesium to potassium to be a little bit more balanced, to keep those vines from becoming potassium deficient. Okay, so just by putting that in, I'm at a pH of 4.5, and I got a little bit too much magnesium. It's saying I should put on 2.3 tons per acre of lime and 24 pounds per acre maintenance rate of K. And I have a little note in there saying, in established vineyards, you should not put down more than 2 to 3 tons per lime per acre per year. Just because lime doesn't move through the soil very well, and it's better to hit it with like, 2 to 3 tons per acre per lime per year until you're in that range of 5.5 to 6.5 than to say put on 6 tons of lime And then you got magnesium, calcium, or potassium problems all over the place. Okay, same thing. Okay, field observations. Say I have low vine size and really high yield. Um, that really didn't change it all that much.
I think
So the
because of
higher the,
your pH.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the higher the yield, um, the more your maintenance rate.
Oh, there
Yeah,
you
there it jumped.
go.
For corrective values, again, you have tissue tests. Say you have a low potassium value that comes in, and now it's adding the maintenance rate plus the corrective rate of K to give you how much potassium fertilizer you need. Again, this is something I might tweak because putting on 400 pounds of potash when you have a really deficient vineyard is not uncommon. So
Right.
I
I was
might
gonna
I,
say,
I
you do
might
it well.
up those values a little bit, just to be consistent with like what we know works in the vineyard. So that's it. That's the nitrogen and potassium calculators. They are in beta. I would love for people to use these and say, hey, that's totally BS. It doesn't work. Like, it's not what I would do in my vineyard. I'd like to hear from you and say, hey, I did the calculator. It said I needed 50 pounds of nitrogen. I know I need 80, and getting that kind of information back will help me tweak the calculators to, get the rates where they need to be.
So just to be clear, these calculators are made for Concord and Concord production.
Yes.
Do they translate to vinifera?
Good question.
Yeah.
uh, so I say that they're for Concord because all of the information is based on like vine excavation studies and soil pH studies and nitrogen rate studies done in own rooted Concord vineyards. In general, it'll translate.
Okay.
uh, but if you're growing Riesling on 3309 rootstock, uh, it the it will change things a little bit because the 3309 rootstock should probably take up more potassium than own rooted Concord will. It may lead to larger vine size. What are your vine balance? I mean, typically wine grapes were running crop sizes a lot lower, so your demand for potassium is a lot lower. But the calculator does capture that. If I'm, let's just, for example, okay, say I have a pH of 6. Buffer pH won't matter in this case. Calcium, yeah, let's just keep the calcium, magnesium, potassium where it is. Say I'm a Riesling and I have a 2.5 pound vine and I'm growing 5 tons per acre or 6 tons per acre. Um, it's still calling for 26 pounds of maintenance,
Uh-huh.
but my tissue test would probably not be low. Um, so I probably would need a corrective rate of potassium. So you're talking $9 an acre of potassium in that Riesling vineyard.
This is a really good.
So yeah, so Riesling, it's on a more vigorous rootstock. I have a lower crop size, so my demand is a lot lower. In this case, my soil pH is where I need it to be, and my petio values, whether it's bloom or veraison or leaf, or if my tissue values are where they should be, and I don't see any potassium deficiency, there's no real reason to go applying something you don't need.
So, Andrew, just looking at the tools that are out there for growers in our
Yeah.
region and other regions, I can see, and I'm not the business management specialist, what a great tool this could be. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. It makes it's kind of a one-stop shop for fertilizer decisions for nitrogen and potassium. It's not only does it cover rates, but it gives you price comparisons and if as long as you have your soil test data and maybe some petiole samples, you can get a really good idea of what your fertilizer requirements are. Um, it's yeah, if you're not already doing this to calculate your fertilizer requirements, definitely check it out. And like Terry said, give us some feedback on it because we want to make this tool as good as possible for the growers to use.
I was just pulling up, hold on one second.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're always very blessed and thankful for the research that you have done here. And I know that you, and I feel actually weird saying it over and over again, but you have helped our industry tremendously on the nutrient front, especially the work that you did for pH and changing
Mhm.
the pH and what that does to vine growth. So adding this next layer, whew, I'm so excited about where this is going.
Oh, hold
How
on.
do you follow up after that, Terry?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted just for those of you who are still interested in like the techie stuff that we do. Okay. All right. You see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I see three
So
zones.
yes. So this is how we applied it from our spatial vineyard management. So one way of doing it is, say I take my yield map and my soil map and I mash those together and do our zone analysis in my EV. I came up with three distinct, statistically different zones in this field. So I could go out now and take a soil sample and or a tissue sample from each one of those zones and stick it into the calculator and then come up with a variable rate prescription map, right, for that vineyard. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is taking the calculator and making it into an Excel sheet. Now, again, some of you probably look at this and say, "Oh, heck no, I'm not doing that." but some of our growers actually asked me to do this, is to put it into put the whole calculator into a spreadsheet form, and now I can take all of my spatial data and apply the calculator to the spatial data.
That's fantastic.
So let me just move forward in this talk. Okay, so by doing that, if I have spatial data from my soil map, from my vine size, from my yield, either if I had tissue samples or if I have the new, hopefully, nutrient sensor from the High Res Vineyard Nutrition Project, I can put that input into that calculator. So in this farm, this particular block, it calculated what my maintenance rate of nitrogen would be. And then based on tissue samples, it also gave me a corrective rate of nitrogen. I put those together, and that would be my variable rate prescription map for urea in that particular block.
So this was based off of, and I just want listeners who might not be able to follow what we're looking at, my EV information, that everything that you have here is geolocated in your Excel because you've downloaded it from some sort of sensor information that you have. And then you've
Right.
layered them all together and applied it to the calculator.
Yeah, so anything that we do in my EV has a latitude and a longitude and then data. So the first two columns you see are longitude and latitude. So it's spatially referenced data. So you could think of each one of these data points, each one of these locations in the vineyard could be a whole block, like
Right. No, that's
like
exactly how I think
yeah,
about it. Yeah.
yeah. And you just have thousands of blocks in that one 6-acre piece. So we just applied that, whatever we knew about the information at that one location in the vineyard, applied the calculator to it, and it came up with a spatial map for us. There's a bunch of stuff you don't need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
And then, so so Kevin Martin was doing this. And the only reason I put this up, this isn't actually his map. It's kind of a map I made from some of his stuff. But the point was, there are several growers that are doing 1-acre grid soil samples. And then we're relating those. You can either just do it as a 1-acre grid, or you relate the 1-acre grid samples to something of the spatial data you get out of the soil sled to make a continuous map, and then be able to calculate what your urea amounts are on. So, okay, that should be enough.
Fantastic.
That should be enough
Yeah.
to confuse anybody.
But if anybody does have additional questions, first of all, go play with these calculators. Go to the efficientvineyard.com, hit the VIP blog and scroll. They're right towards the top. Play with these calculators in your own operations, and then give us feedback. Let Terry know how he could maybe work better, or, whatever you need to know that helps you.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, like in the recommends, if you got a low potassium tissue value, I think the rate is to put on 400 pounds of potash. And I don't think in the calculator I let it go that high, but I might switch that because the more feedback I'm getting on that, they're like, yeah, I put on 400 pounds of potash, no problem.
I've had people put between 400 to 600 pounds of potash
Yeah,
on.
right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for all your work and taking time out of your busy schedule to share that
Yeah.
with our growers and our listeners. I really appreciate that. Andrew,
Nope,
is
happy.
anything that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't let you speak, Terry. My apologies.
No, I just happy to be here.
Appreciate that. Andrew, anything that you would like to add?
No, I'm good. There's a lot I learned from just listening to you two talk about these things, and I have ideas working in my head on how to apply this on the management side, on the business management side. So, um, if growers have ideas about that as well after listening to this conversation, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk about it and get some of your perspective on fertilizer and the business management decisions you use going into your prescription plans for your vineyards. Yeah.
Cool stuff. And if you guys need any additional information, you can find all of our contact information out on our website. So please, or leave a comment below on YouTube and we can get back to you as well there. So thank you so much for your time, everybody here on the call and everybody listening. Look forward to our next podcast coming up in a couple of weeks. If you have any questions about management operations, please feel free to reach out to us. And if you have suggestions on podcasts that you want to hear in the future, we want to hear about that too. So thanks, everybody. Have a great week.